Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. You can check out the full broadcast at MediaLex.us, or you can listen on the live stream. We will be getting started in about 3 minutes.
You are listening to MediaLex Radio WLXU 93.9 LPFM, Lexington, Kentucky.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of Lexington Community Radio or its board of directors. The views expressed are solely those of the programmers.
You are listening to Off the Cuff. Now, here's your host.
Welcome, everybody, to Off the Cuff. I am Adam Banks coming at you live from Lexington, Kentucky. Thank you for listening to the show, and thank you for tuning in to WLXU 93.9 FM. In addition to listening on the radio, you can check out our Facebook live stream at Off the Cuff with Adam Banks, or you can stream the show live from the station website at MediaLex.us to listen to us from anywhere in the entire world. I am broadcasting from the WLXU studios here at MediaLex on North Limestone. It is Thursday, August the 20th, 2026, and I could not wait to get on the air with you today. That's why I hurried up through my intro, because I love you all so much. School is officially back in session for a lot of people. We talked a little bit about that last week. Even more schools have already started. I actually went back this week. The faculty went back, and you know what? It feels good to be back. I really do enjoy where I teach. I love my coworkers. They're some of the best people that I've ever worked with, and it just feels really good to be back. And I hope everybody is getting a good start to their year. And speaking of school, folks, we have some unfinished business to do here on Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. For the last several weeks, we have been playing a game show every time that we start off the program. We have been playing Are You Smarter Than? And we started in the 3rd grade and have done every grade since. And I ask you a series of questions regarding that grade, and you answer out loud at home what you think the answer is before I reveal. And we've done all the way up to the 11th grade, junior in high school. And last week on the show, I told you guys that I would be promoting you this week to the 12th grade. So folks, it is now time to play Are You Smarter Than a 12th Grader? And folks, 12th grade is the last year of high school. It is your senior year. Some call this the easiest year because you've got all of your basics out of the way. But there is still things that you learn in senior year of high school because you have to take advanced classes if you want to go to a good college, if you want to put yourself above the competition. So there are things that you will still learn in the 12th grade. So these particular questions are 12th grade level questions. Let's see how you do. I've got about 25 questions to ask, and this will wrap up our Are You Smarter Than series for public school. So question 1, are you smarter than a 12th grader? Go ahead and shout out your answer. Don't take too long because I will reveal it. All right, question 1, who wrote Hamlet? A famous novel by a very famous man, and his name is William Shakespeare. Question 2, what event brought the United States into World War II? What started it all? That would be the attack on Pearl Harbor. What Supreme Court case established the principle of judicial review? A ton of Supreme Court cases, a lot of famous ones. This is more of the more famous. Marbury versus Madison is the answer. All right, next question. How are we doing so far? Are you smarter than a 12th grader? Who was the president during most of the Great Depression and World War II? That would be FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt. And what's interesting about that is FDR was in a wheelchair. Would a man in a wheelchair get elected to office today? I don't think so. Because of television, because of the media, because of social media. I don't know. I did a whole dissertation in grad school about the different characteristics that politicians have and what gets them elected. Nothing wrong with being in a wheelchair. Most people can't help that. But some people would find that as a weakness. So that's interesting, if that would happen or not. Question 5, who was the British Prime Minister during much of World War II? That would have been Winston Churchill. What does the First Amendment protect? Hopefully you know this, folks. It's the First Amendment of our Constitution. And it's very important rights that it protects. It protects not only our freedom of speech, but it also protects our freedom of religion, press, and assembly, and petition. What is the term for a word that imitates a sound? Onomatopoeia. Should have learned that in grade school or high school. Question 8. What U.S. territory was purchased from Russia in 1867? That would have been Alaska. What amendment protects the right to bear arms? Another very important amendment in our U.S. Constitution. A lot of people you hear are passionate about it, but do you know what amendment it is? It's the second. Who was the founder of Islam? This is a religion. That would be Muhammad. What hormone lowers blood glucose levels? That would be insulin. Something very expensive in the United States if you don't have insurance. What type of wave requires a medium to travel? That would be a mechanical wave. What country has the most time zones when including its overseas territories? And it is not the U.S. It is the country of France. They have the most time zones. What economic system is based primarily on private ownership and free markets? That would be the economic system of capitalism. What is the acceleration of an object moving at constant velocity? A physics question, maybe even a basic science question, but it's a 12th grade question. The answer would be 0. What branch of biology studies heredity? The answer would be genetics. What structure connects bones to other bones? I know a lot about this because I injured this particular thing. That would be a ligament. My shoulder's doing better, by the way. I'm on 6.5 weeks. Next question, what structure connects muscles to bones? What structure connects muscles to bones? Last question I asked you, what connects bones to other bones? What structure connects muscles to bones? That would be a tendon, folks. A tendon. All right, next question. What part of the human eye controls how much light enters? That would be the iris, that part of the eye. What is the use of exaggerated statements for emphasis called? Like if I was to look at you and say, I've told you 1,000 times. I might have not in reality told you 1,000 times. It's an extreme exaggeration. Or, I bet you $1 million. Well, obviously I'm not being real. I don't have $1 million to bet. It's an extreme exaggeration. What's that called? It is called a hyperbole. What was the first U.S. capital under the Constitution? 12th grade level questions, folks. All of these seniors in high school are walking around with their book bags right now, knowing this answer. And you could be 35, 50 years old, not even knowing it yourself. The first U.S. capital under the Constitution was New York City. What is a light year a measurement of? That would be distance. What is the largest lake in Africa? The largest lake in Africa. Big country. Big country. That would be Lake Victoria. What is the driest continent on Earth? The driest continent on Earth, we know there's 7, which is the driest. That would be Antarctica, folks. What is the term for fear of a specific object or situation? That would be phobia. And folks, that pretty much wraps up our 12th grade exam. How did you do? Are you smarter than a 12th grader? And the point of this whole game over the last several weeks was not to pick at you, was not to make fun at you. It was to really show you how much we learn and how much we forget. The building blocks that we learn sometimes sticks with us. It sticks with us the most. The spelling, the reading, the writing, the subtraction, the addition, the division, multiplication. When you get beyond that, that kind of stuff is hard to retain if you are not exercising that information in your brain. So I was deliberately making fun of you guys on purpose, teasing you, giving you a hard time. A lot of these questions, I don't know if I would know the answer to, had the answer not be right in front of me. So it's easy for me to make fun. So don't feel sad. Don't feel bad. Don't feel like you need to re-enroll back in school. Most people probably didn't do good on these exams. But it is important to have a good school, and not only have a good school, but have good teachers. It don't matter if you go to school or not if you don't have good teachers teaching you this information. They may be trying to teach the information, but it's just not landing with kids because there are just no good teachers in that school. And that's a travesty. Education is so important, and it is so important for us to invest and train good teachers for our future. But I have really enjoyed this game, Are You Smarter Than? And I had so much fun playing it, and I hope you did too. But folks, we have so much more to talk about right here on Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Hello, everyone. I am Adam Banks, the host of Off the Cuff, and you are listening to MediaLex Radio, WLXU 93.9 LPFM, Lexington, Kentucky.
WLX thanks International Quiz Bowl tournaments for being an amplifier of the voice of the people. IQBTNASAT.com.
MediaLex is grateful to Founder Circle member Marilyn Daniel for their generous investment in our mission, a level of exceptional giving that reflects the spirit of our founder and community champion, Deborah Hensley.
MediaLex has the support of presenting sponsor Bluegrass Community Foundation, bgcf.org.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. Happy National Radio Day. And we'll talk more about that in detail in the last segment. But yes, today, folks, August the 20th is a big day in radio. It is National Radio Day. One of my favorite things in the world, radio, we celebrate today. And I play in the background the theme music to one of the most famous radio shows of all time, The Howard Stern Show, which still broadcasts today on SiriusXM for now. I've been seeing a lot of things in the news about Howard Stern. Howard just signed a 3-year extension with SiriusXM. Comes out to be around $90 million a year to host 3 days a week. Without a doubt, the most popular radio personality of all time, arguably. But then, after re-signing with SiriusXM, it is now reported that Howard has retracted his contract, revised it to only now do 1 episode per week at SiriusXM. So he will only be doing 1 show a week. It will either be on Tuesday or Wednesday. He don't even return back to the air until September. But man, I think the end is near for Howard. 1 episode a week, what is that? That's off the cuff right there. We broadcast once a week and now Howard's doing it too? I don't know why he didn't just quit. Go out on top. Now he's just going to hang around for the next 3 years doing 1 episode a week. I don't see that lasting a year. I really don't. They already have his archives, SiriusXM, until like 2035. And I believe they're planning on just filling the rest of his days that he's not on the air with just archived footage. But Howard Stern, say what you want to about him, at the age of 72 years old, is one of the most famous personalities of radio. One of the best to ever do it. At one point in time, he was having 9 million listeners a day tune into that show. A day. Imagine flipping on the mic and 9 million people automatically listening to you. That was the Howard Stern Show. If you've ever watched anything about Howard, his story is amazing. Starting out at a very small, crummy station, working his way up to New York City at WNBC, getting fired and then starting his own show at a station in New York, getting it nationally syndicated into the largest show of all time. What a story. And broke the rules every single day. He was fined at one point $250,000 a day by the FCC, and they were fining the stations and suing Howard, and he was having to pay them out of his own pocket, which eventually led him to leave terrestrial radio and go to SiriusXM. He had to really fight to be where he's at. But the only excuse that I can make of him wanting to leave early is he's just sick of it. He's burnt out. But, folks, in honor of National Radio Day, one of my favorite topics, because I love radio and radio is so fun to talk about, I wanted to do a radio segment, and I started thinking about what can I do to celebrate National Radio Day. And we've celebrated it on this show before because it's only fell on a Thursday twice. When I first got on the air in 2019 and now this year in 2026. And I went back and I listened. How did I celebrate it the first year? And I talked about National Radio Day by celebrating some of the most controversial moments in radio history, where we played some clips of controversial moments. And we talked about some prank calls. I played some Roy D. Mercer, because prank calls is one of my favorite things that people do on the radio. But how was I going to celebrate it this year? And I felt like the best way to celebrate National Radio Today is just to talk about some of the most recognizable radio shows and radio theme songs of all time. And we started with Howard Stern, and we started with Howard Stern's theme song. So not only does Howard Stern have a great show, but he had a great theme song that he had Rob Zombie produce personally for him in 1999. And he's used this theme ever since. It's instantly recognizable when you hear it. It's from the Howard Stern Show. Rob Zombie made it for Howard Stern. It's called The Great American Nightmare, and it is very Howardish. What's great about this song is it doesn't necessarily introduce Howard Stern. It tells you what kind of radio you're about to hear. Loud, aggressive, dangerous. But folks, there are other radio programs that are famous. I think about radio from the 1950s, the 40s, the golden age of radio, when you had theme songs like this. This is from an old radio program called The Green Hornet. And this was broadcasted on a station out of Detroit, WXYZ, from 1936 to 1950. And The Green Hornet was a show about a superhero. He was the Green Hornet. And what I loved about radio in the golden age is that it had basically radio dramas. Instead of watching it on TV, you would just listen to it on radio, because TV wasn't popular. Not everybody had a television back then. So there were soap operas on TV. There were dramas on TV. There were superhero shows on the radio. I was saying TV. I meant on the radio. There were soap operas on radio. Dramas on radio. Superhero shows on radio. And The Green Hornet was one of them. It's one of the greatest examples of a great former radio program with a great theme song. Radio is all about the ears. It's all about the audio. So when you're creating a radio show, like a drama or a TV show of sorts for radio, you really want to focus on the theme music too. Everything dealing with sound is important for a radio broadcast. I miss the days when you had TV shows on the radio, but they wasn't called TV shows. All right, here is another old radio program called The Whistler. And this was a show that was on from 1942 to 1955. It was on CBS Radio, so it was a nationally syndicated show. The Whistler was a crime anthology radio series. It was built around the stories of crime, fate, and ironic consequences. But it had a great opening. You gotta love it. The Whistler himself acted almost like a Greek chorus. This was great theme music. No explosions, no special effects, no monster, just footsteps, a whistle, and some haunting music. And suddenly, you're somewhere you don't want to be. This was another great radio show right here. It was called Suspense. That's what they would play before every start of a show in that show Suspense. It was from CBS from 1942 to 1962. They had that great theme music. The guy who composed this, Bernard Herrmann, he later composed the film scores for Alfred Hitchcock. He's the one who did the Alfred Hitchcock score. So he also wrote this score for the radio program Suspense. And every week there would be a show on the radio that would take you through a suspenseful crime or a suspenseful situation. And every episode was different. Every time the actors were different. It was great. Suspense. Now, let me take you back and let you listen to a little snippet of this radio show. And I love this because this is kind of what radio used to be like. You could turn on the radio in your car, at your home. A lot of people would sit at home on their porch, in their living room. Instead of watching TV because they didn't have one, they would just listen to the radio. And they would listen to radio dramas, radio mysteries. And it would be suspenseful. So let me take you back to what it used to sound like, listening to an old radio program. Here is a little snippet of the show Suspense. This is episode 899, Till Death Do Us Part. Take a listen. Yes. I mean, folks, don't this make you want to listen? Yes, drink it now. I mean, he's trying to kill this woman. You gotta love that. And these were only 15-minute little episodes. Every day they would be about 15 minutes. There were no commercials. And people would listen. It was like appointment television. It was called appointment radio back then. You would have to be by your radio at a particular time to go back and to listen to these shows. And they would play a new episode every day. And it was just awesome. Awesome how they used to do that stuff. All right, here is another famous radio show back in the day, which eventually turned into a TV show, talking about the Lone Ranger. This radio program, before it was ever a television show, debuted in 1933 in Detroit, Michigan, on a station called WXYZ. Again, this was just another radio drama where they had radio actors act out like a play for you on the radio. And there was a new episode every day of The Lone Ranger. This is perhaps the most borrowed theme in radio history, I would say. Maybe the most recognizable of any type of radio show. I'd say a lot of you guys thought I was going to be talking about only talk radio shows. But no, I'm talking about radio shows. Any type of radio show, whether it be talk radio like I do, or little dramas that used to be on the air. Here is a snippet, folks, of The Lone Ranger. This is what The Lone Ranger used to sound like on the air back in the day. And the thing about that type of radio like that is it's just like reading a book. You don't see the actors. You have to picture in your head what you think they look like. You have to picture in your head what you feel like the scene looks like. Because you can't see any of it. So some people enjoyed this type of stuff more than watching television. Now, Gunsmoke is the next one on the list. Now, Gunsmoke eventually went on to be a television show, but it started out as a radio program. One of the most popular radio programs of all time. It aired from 1952 to 1961. Now, they had different themes when it went on to television, but that was what Gunsmoke sounded like when it was on the radio, and it was just as popular on the radio as it was on television. It was one of the first shows from television to originate from radio. And remember when I said soap operas even started out on the radio before they was on television? And some soap operas went from radio to television. One of the most popular soap operas to ever transition from radio to television was The Guiding Light. It was on NBC Radio and CBS Radio from 1937 to 1956. And Guiding Light is the longest show of any show that's ever aired in America, period, on television. That's the type of power The Guiding Light had when it was on TV. But it started out as a radio program. This was the theme song for it. A lot of housewives appreciated Guiding Light. And it didn't take up much house time either. Because you got to think. The soap opera was only like 15 minutes. Take a little 15-minute break, get back to your house chores. Didn't take much time out of people's day. You were able to afford watching a soap opera every now and again on the radio. Now, listen to a soap opera every now and again on the radio. Let's take a listen to what a soap opera used to sound like years ago, back in the golden age of radio, back in the 30s, back in the 40s, when it aired as a soap opera, just audio. Take a listen.
Papa, I could be mistaken, but I've had the pity for some weeks now that Bill not only takes a drink at home, but yeah. Well, Papa, he's said himself that the men in the office get together at the end of the day and stop in someplace with a glass of beer or a coffee. Then there's many days wrong in it, except if it becomes a habit. Well, from what I read, not that I know too much about it, but it seems as though once a person gets into the habit of needing a stimulant or thinking of needing.
And see, the thing about this stuff now, you hear it and you might think, this is so weird, this is so boring, I could never live like this. This is all they used to have back in the day. This was a big deal to have dramas on the radio. This was the only type of medium. And this was the strongest, most popular medium that people used. It's a shame that we don't have dramas. I feel like dramas should come back. Soap operas should come back. TV shows converted back to radio. I think people would enjoy them. It would give radio more character, like it used to have. Now it's dominated by sports talk in general about anything. And don't get me wrong, I love that. That's what I do. But that's not what all radio should be. We should go back to the days where we had dramas. Don't you agree? Or are you just fine with talk and music? This was another great radio program and radio theme song. It was called The Shadow. It aired in the 1930s on CBS Radio. This was another fascinating crime show, mystery show, as you can tell. And every episode would be something different. All right, here's another one. It's called let's see. Captain Midnight. This was a radio program. This was a program from the 1930s, and this was another program that focused on a superhero. And then finally, we've got one more here to share for you, and this was called Dick Tracy. This was a radio show back in the 30s and 40s called Dick Tracy. This also went on to be a television show, but it started off as a radio program in the 1930s and 40s. This music is punchy, it's short, it's functional. That's exactly what a radio series like this needs. So, folks, that pretty much wraps up my segment on some of the most recognizable radio shows and radio show theme songs of all time. I think the whole point of this was we need to bring back radio shows. When I say radio shows, I'm not talking about just talk radio shows, but radio dramas, radio soap operas, radio game shows. Look how many people enjoyed the first segment of Off the Cuff when I do the game show. Imagine having a game show, just a radio show that was a game show every day, and it was live. You could call in and just play a game. We need to beef up the radio content in the radio world. The dramas need to start. Wade says on the show thread to start the dramas again. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Maybe I should stop yakking about it and try to initiate it, because that really was the golden age of radio. Right there when we had dramas and other things for people to listen to. There's just something great about sitting around a radio and listening to it. You can use your mind. I think it stimulates your mind when you listen to a radio versus watching a television. You have to use your mind in ways that you can't use it watching television. You have to create more of an imagination in your mind. That's why kids, I think, get smart, is because they expand on their imagination. And as adults, we retain that by expanding on our imagination, and listening to radio and reading are ways that we can do that. So happy National Radio Day, everybody. And of course, we'll talk more about that in the last segment. Stick with us. You are listening to Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. We'll be right back.
You are listening to Media Lex Radio, WLXU 93.9 LPFM, Lexington, Kentucky. Media Lex is grateful to Founder Circle member Tanya Jackson for their generous investment in our mission, a level of exceptional giving that reflects the spirit of our founder and community champion, Deborah Hensley. Hello, this is Kia Arnold, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my show, Resilience, where we talk about real stories, real struggles, and real growth, all while keeping the resilience, every Friday at 11 a.m. only on Media Lex Radio, WLXU 93.9 LPFM, Lexington, Kentucky.
At Radio Lex, we want to keep our community safe.
Per the ACLU, if the police or ICE are at your home, stay calm and keep the door closed.
Ask if they're immigration agents and what they're there for. Ask the agent or officer to show you a badge or identification through the window or peephole.
Ask if they have a warrant signed by a judge. If they say they do, ask them to slide it under the door or hold it up to a window so you can inspect it.
Don't lie or produce any false documents. Don't sign anything without speaking with a lawyer first.
Do not open your door unless ICE shows you a judicial search or arrest warrant naming a person in your address and or areas to be searched at your address.
If they don't produce a warrant, keep the door closed. State, I do not consent to your entry.
If agents force their way in, do not resist.
If you wish to exercise your rights, state, I do not consent to your entry or to your search of these premises. I am exercising my right to remain silent. I wish to speak to a lawyer as soon as possible.
Radio Lex is committed to providing trustworthy information to our community.
For more information, visit radiolex.us or aclu.org.
Media Lex has the support of presenting sponsor Visit Lex. VisitLex.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. Now, I am not a married man, and a lot of my friends are married. A lot of people are married, especially people my age, being in their 30s. But this article necessarily wasn't relatable to me, but it's relatable to those of you who are currently married. And since most of my audience, I'm sure, that listens are probably married individuals, this article may be interesting to you if you have one of these jobs or hobbies, because people are saying that if you have one of these jobs or hobbies, it could potentially ruin your marriage. Now, work is a place where your marriage could be destroyed. A lot of cheating happens at work, especially when one's at home and one's at work. But here are some of the jobs and hobbies that could absolutely ruin your marriage. So be on the caution side if you have one of these. It says separation rates in the film industry. That includes anything with production, anything with entertainment, anything with acting. The radio would fall under this, it says. It could be quite high of intense long weeks, lots of travel, and often last-minute schedule changes. It can take a toll on a marriage. It says that a lot of divorces break up after one partner gets really into fitness and weight loss and the other partner doesn't, because it can lead to insecurities, infidelity, or just simply changes in compatibility. Who you fell in love with 10 years ago might not be the person physically 10 years later, and it might change the dynamic. It says here bodybuilding, and especially steroid use in bodybuilders. It's got this steroid called Trenbolone, and it's basically called divorce in a bottle, because it says if you take this, it could cause side effects like mood instability, irritability, lack of apathy, all of that stuff. Empathy, so you don't want to get on that. It says being a truck driver is bad for a marriage, because after a few years, if you're not already divorced, it feels like that you don't know each other anymore, because you're constantly on the road and gone. You don't get to make any functions, any family functions, reunions, graduations, school plays. You miss all of that. Having a hobby where you are obsessed with video games. Yes, if you're staying up till 4 a.m. gaming every night, but you can't take 5 minutes to feed your newborn baby, how does that look? There's stories of people almost burning their house down because they start cooking and they get so intent into their gaming, they forget that they have the stove on and they almost catch the house on fire. It's a very dark addiction to go down, and a lot of adults get it. A lot of male adults, females too, but mostly male adults get this, and it completely turns into an obsession, and all of their focus goes to playing video games. Owning a business, they say, could destroy a marriage, because if someone is constantly working and thinking about work, talking about work, stressing about finances, always having everything on their shoulders since they're the boss, that could cause friction in the marriage. It says being in the military, because you got one person traveling everywhere and the other person is home all the time. It's just a separate life. Another hobby they say is bad for marriages is a friend. It says one time a friend picked up golf, and it said that golf resulted in a divorce for him and his wife. And it was because they spent countless hours on the weekend and evenings on the golf course, and they wouldn't make time for anything else. They said ultra-marathon running is another hobby that could destroy a marriage, especially if one person runs and the other one doesn't. One person, they say, another job, they say if one person has a profession that involves a position of power, such as a cop, a lawyer, military officer, a judge, could cause friction in a marriage because the unbalanced power dynamic blends into the relationship and it eventually causes a downfall. Working at a car dealership, it says, is a job that could destroy a marriage because half the salespeople, they say, usually divorce or end up cheating on their spouses at car lots. Part of the problem is that sales is just a hustle job too. And you got to work to make money. So these people are constantly forced to be workaholics. And think about working with the public, the people you meet constantly every day. Nursing is the final one. Relationships suffer because of long days that nurses have to work. Inconsistent schedules, stressful environments. And there's also a stereotype about nurses just being cheaters, too. So they say nursing is a job that could be crucial for a marriage. So be on the lookout, folks, and be on caution. Not saying that this is going to happen to you, just be on the lookout. All right, folks, this seems like a great place to take Off the Cuff's Song of the Week break. Here's the most famous entertainer in the world, Miss Taylor Swift. We'll be back after the song. Death has no discrimination when it comes to age. Actress Hayden Panettiere dies at the age of just 36 years old. If you don't know who Hayden Panettiere is, she was an actress. She was on the movie Scream. She started off on the soap opera One Life to Live. She was on the show Nashville, just 36 years old. Beautiful girl. It says here that the 911 received a call on August the 16th at 1:51 precisely, and they responded to a home in California, and they identified Hayden Panettiere as the patient. And there was an autopsy. There were no signs of trauma, and they're still trying to figure out what caused the death. There was some Narcan at the scene that the media found, so we don't really know if it was an overdose. A source tells People magazine that Narcan was found, so it is still being investigated. She leaves behind an 11-year-old daughter, Kaya. Very, very sad, and I know that she had some mental health issues. She was very vocal about it. She struggled a lot, and I hated to hear that. Such a beautiful human being to die so young. And folks, if you or someone you know is struggling with mental health challenges, emotional distress, or substance abuse problems, or you just need to talk or just text somebody, you can text 988 or chat at 988lifeline.org 24/7. If you need somebody to talk to, there is always somebody there. Folks, we have one more segment to go. Stick with us. You are listening to Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. We'll be right back.
PLX is grateful to Founder Circle members Marilyn for their generous investment in our mission, a level of exceptional giving that reflects the spirit of our founder and community champion, Deborah Hensley.
PLX has the support of presenting sponsor Bluegrass Community Foundation, bgcf.org.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. Last segment of the hour. And as I said earlier in the show, today's national holiday is National Radio Day, which is every August the 20th. It just so happens to fall on Off the Cuff's Radio Day. This day celebrates the powerful medium that has shaped communication and culture for over a century, from news to music. Radio connects communities and it informs millions of people. Now, radio continues to reach a vast audience, with approximately 90% of Americans turning in weekly to radio. This includes traditional broadcast and digital streaming platforms. Now, because of podcasting, radio industry is not going anywhere anytime soon. If anything, podcasting has helped radio. Back in the day, you couldn't go back and listen to a broadcast that formerly aired on the radio. It just disappeared out into the abyss. But now, because of podcasting, you can go back and listen to all of the archived episodes of a radio show. Have you ever wondered what is the difference between AM and FM radio? AM stands for amplitude modulation. And AM radio varies the amplitude of the radio wave to encode sound, offering a wider broadcast range but lower sound quality. And it's often got a lot of interference. So AM radio actually broadcasts a lot further. It's just less clear. I remember as a little boy, I used to sit in my room and listen to AM radio stations, because you used to could listen to AM radio stations at nighttime and listen from Letcher County, Kentucky, all the way in cities like Chicago and Philadelphia and Indianapolis and Cincinnati. You could hear all of these different shows in Delaware, shows in Detroit. And they were sitting from my little bed in the head of a holler in Letcher County. All because it was AM radio. So AM stands for amplitude modulation, and FM stands for frequency modulation. W versus K. Have you ever wondered that? Have you ever wondered why some call letters start off with W and some call letters start off with K? Well, it says here that radio stations west of the Mississippi River uses K as the first letter in their call signs, such as KISS FM, and those east to the Mississippi River use W, hence WLXU. Here's another fun fact about radio. You can listen to an all year round Christmas channel. It's called Christmas All Year, and it's on foreverchristmasradio.com. It says here another fun fact about radio: for 62% of shoppers, they've been listening to the radio just 14 minutes before heading into the store. What an advertising company. It says 71% of people surveyed, that more than 2/3 of people say they listen to the radio in their car. Where do you listen to the radio, if you do? Do you listen in your car? Do you listen at home? There is no special particular place you can listen to it. There's no special place. The great thing about radio is you can take it with you anywhere. It keeps your drives interesting. You can always discover music on the radio, discover new programs, discover new talent. The radio is just awesome, and I can't brag about it enough. Folks, happy National Radio Day, and thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. If you liked what you heard today, you'll probably like our previous episodes. We archive them all on podcast. We archive them on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you stream your podcast. You can follow the show on social media at Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. You can follow me, the show host, on social media at The Adam Banks. We release new episodes every Thursday from 4 to 5 right here on WLXU 93.9 FM, which means we will be back. Same time, same place next week. Ladies and gentlemen, I am the King of Radio, Adam Banks, and this is Off the Cuff. I'll catch you down the road.